Cool. What stage are you investing at typically right now?
Yeah, so we raised our third fund. So we have 500 million. So we have like an early fund where we do pre-seed, seed, and Series A, and then we have a growth fund, uh, mostly B. And then we also like all of our LPs. We can like if we need to in a week, we could put together like 100 million SPV. So we have it's really nice because again, like I'm applying community building to this, where I'm like, oh, this is a long game. If we meet a great founder and they just raise their seed, well, let's just be as helpful as possible, and then maybe we can invest in their A.
Got it. So maybe I guess I'll focus this question in on kind of the early stage investments for people who have kind of like, a successful open source project just in isolation of the open source and they're wanting to turn that into a business. I imagine there's kind of a lot of people pitching you that have that kind of situation. What are things that you are seeing a lot of that, oh, if you could just improve this, that would really, improve outcomes? Like what would be your advice to a lot of those kinds of developers that are trying to turn that open source project into a business?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool that I have like my builder marketing community hat because I want all the founders to succeed. So for example, if I'm looking at a founder that has open source traction, I still am like, hey, what is like, are you what's your go to market strategy? What's your community strategy? How are you messaging this? What's the story that you're telling? And then, right, like, have you spoken to kind of like the community members? Like, what are they willing to pay? Right. Like, I also then it's like, you kind of have to like start thinking about it as like, okay, setting it up as like a business, right? With all like the different facets of like how to run a successful, or like what a business needs to be from like, because I think if you have an open source project, right, you can just be one person, right, that's maintaining it, that's updating the docs, that's talking. But I think when you're doing the transition from kind of like one or two people to like, okay, now I want to kind of build a business around this, then you have to kind of start thinking about like brand and messaging and okay, what are the first few hires you would have, and kind of what is like what if you're talking to your community members, what are they saying, like do they use this in production? Is this, again, this goes back to the like, oh, is this like a nice feature, or is this something that they would really pay for and this could be like a critical part of their workflow? And then start thinking about kind of like what else is out there, are there competing products out there, and then how would you kind of build a paid version, right? Well, what does that look like?
Got it. So then let's take one step forward then. So now, for the companies that have raised their seed rounds, they're kind of progressing towards that Series A. I'm curious how, because a lot of investors I've talked to have kind of different opinions on this right now. It's a little tough with the economy being in such a volatile situation right now. What do you recommend that seed stage companies are focusing on when it comes to things like metrics? Are you kind of in the camp of like just revenues, it's revenue, or do you have kind of more specific?
It's shifted so fast.
Yeah.
It changed so fast from even 6 months ago. You could still raise with just a deck and with just like great open source traction, right? You could be like, hey, we doubled in the number of open source, number of like GitHub stars, or we like, we drive this much traffic to our website. Like the metrics changed, right? And again, I'm super new to investing, so I only have kind of like the lens from my firm. But yeah, it must be tough, right, as a founder going to raise, because I think every firm is saying something a little bit different. But I do think overall, revenue, right, or potential to revenue, or how you're going to monetize is kind of the big question everyone's asking, more than kind of like the amount of like open source adoption you have. I think consider, right, so you probably won't be able to, it's harder to raise A's now, so be open to things like a safe, or letting VCs maybe buy like secondary. So just kind of be open to kind of different, maybe just a flat round. Is like, I also think there's nothing wrong with like a flat round, right? Like I don't know. I think there's just sometimes like the Silicon Valley of like, okay, you have to like, this is the valuation now at this A. But again, right, it's just like you just need cash, right? Like, and also just
I like to remind
early
people
days,
Google once did a down round. Like,
yeah, right.
you know,
Like, yeah, exactly.
Google got through it. Like
And
you
you
can
just
too.
and you just need cash, right? Whether it's like okay, you're like, okay, we're feeling that we have the traction. We just need a bit of extra cash, right, to get us over there. So it's okay to do like a seed plus, or a secondary. So don't get caught too much on the valuation right now, and also like dilution, right? Because like dilution at a seed isn't that much in like the long tail. So that's kind of my observation and things I've been telling founders.
Got it. Matt, do you have a follow up to that or?
No, I don't have a follow up to that specifically. If you did, feel free.
No. Go ahead.
All right. So we are quickly approaching, our time here, and Jana, I want to thank you, but I do have
That
one
went by
question.
so fast. This was great.
I know.